Greetings and salutations, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another special episode of the Unfiltered, Uncensored, and Unapologetically Black podcast show, Speak to the Mic. I am your illustrious host, Marlon Joseph. And ladies and gentlemen, you know the drill on this show. Here we like to provide helpful and useful content and information to the Black community, talk to Black men and women of all professions, entities, workspaces, and organizations about the work that they do, as well as give acknowledgement and thanks to those Black men and women who are using their positions of power, platforms, and professions in a more positive way to help move the culture forward in a more positive way. For all my listeners, make sure you guys, if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you hit that like button and that subscribe button on my YouTube channel, as well as on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and all other podcast platforms you can find this podcast on. Joining me today is a very intelligent Black man who has done some tremendous things in the field of robotics. He's a software engineer who has transitioned to becoming a robotics teacher for a nonprofit organization out there in Memphis, Tennessee. I will also be remiss to mention the fact he's also my brother-in-law. So he and I share a lot of things in common when it comes to the field of technology and our overall excitement and just passion about the actual field, and how we can, mentor more of our young Black people into being exposed into this particular workspace, because technology, as we know, is constantly advancing, and it's in high demand, and it's high paying too. I want to make sure I mention that. So joining me today to talk about robotics is John Mahoro. Don, my brother. Appreciate your time, man, for taking the time out to speak to me about this. I've been, obviously we've been having conversations about just the work that you've been doing out there in Memphis, and just overall, man, I think it's been incredible how you've been able to expose more and more kids to the whole idea of technology, let alone specifically in the robotics realm. So, yeah, thank you so much for taking the time out to speak to me about it. I want to just jump right in and ask this question. Generally, one question I always ask my guests on the show is that, what even sparks your interest to even go into this particular position of teaching robotics to young kids in the community of Memphis, especially given that you've been a software engineer, you transitioned from corporate America over to teaching for a nonprofit organization out there. So what even sparked your interest in even going into this particular avenue?
Sure, but I guess before I say anything, I'll go ahead and say thank you for this opportunity to, again, as I always say, have a good dialogue around, especially a lot of things that's happening, locally wherever you are, but specifically here in Memphis, and just have me as a guest. As you say, we're already family,
Yeah.
so this is great to have as far as a conversation. But that's a great question. I think I always get asked the same thing. One of the things is, as we know, I maybe I turn back the clock and said, 10 years ago, right? We didn't know technology the way we know it right now. We know technology was moving the needle. But that's why some of us got into it. I got into it young in high school. I just had the interest. But one of the things I realized as I was in corporate America is that you notice that the room looks different. And by we mean different, we notice that there's lack of representation from our young, Black men and Black women being in the space as well. And we can't always just sit back and assume that people are going to walk in the door, right?
Yep.
So I just got this desire. I was always a teacher. My wife and I started tutoring business way, way back. And so teaching was always in the back of my mind. But when I started volunteering around, computer science, technology, is when I realized the lack of individuals out there on the ground, and there's boots on the ground to be able to do their work. So short version is, I should say, is having a conversation with your wife and say, hey, I have a mentor that I've met, and he and the two other people started a nonprofit. They're looking for good talent, people that have a good mindset about helping the community. I'm going to quit my 9 to 5 or full-time job as a corporate America and go work for a nonprofit. That's literally how it happened.
Yeah.
But she believed in me and knew that the type of person that I was, that I meant, that I wanted to work within the community and help our young people and our future generations. So that's literally how it started. It wasn't easy. I wouldn't say it was like an easy move,
Yeah.
but we made some adjustments and things like that. But if you have the drive and the will, you know, I always say you make things happen. So for me, it was personal, but the impact is about literally walking side by side with the students in person, not just talking about from a long-handed, you know, as I said, long-handed spoon, but you're actually right there physically and doing those things. So to me, it was very personal.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? I want to touch on something that you mentioned. So turning the clock back 10 years ago, and this is going to
Mm-hmm,
age us real quick, John. So
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
quick backstory, ladies and gentlemen. So John and I, not only are we family and, you know, in-laws, but we actually embarked and enrolled on the same Java boot camp program together, where we were learning different programming languages and just different various technologies, if you will, for a particular company out there in Memphis, Tennessee. And so it initially started off 11 of us, 11 of us gentlemen who actually enrolled in the program. And out of that 11, only 7 of us, I believe, actually finished the entire 6-week course. This was a full-time 6-week course. So Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. Obviously, we were, I know for me personally, I was embarking on something that I hadn't been as greatly exposed to as most of the guys there in the class. So, you know, obviously I had, you know, I had to, you know, really catch up and be able to, at the very least, get to a place where my level of understanding was right there, you know, on a professional level, because I was only exposed to the basic concepts of most of these programming languages.
mm-hmm,
And so it was very intriguing and very time consuming, but we put our all into this and we finished that course. We were the first class to actually finish over at Cook Systems International, where they hosted the Java Boot Camp. And we're seeing more now since, and that's been 10 years ago. So we're seeing more corporations and companies now start to adapt the notion of you know, obviously providing different types of tools and just training for their potential employees to
mm-hmm,
learn the different things, and they need them to learn in order to become developers and software engineers and things of that nature. So
mm-hmm.
um, I'm forever grateful for my experience there, both with you and with the rest of the guys there, because, you know, it had not been for that program, I don't know where I would have been. I mean, my passion for technology, you know, stems from when I was a kid. But, you know,
Mm-hmm.
as I got older, I grew more and more interest in it. And so from that point on, that opportunity, that training program that Cook provided for me is, you know, obviously a huge part of and a contribution to where I am today professionally as a data analyst. And I
Mm-hmm.
wear this on
Absolutely.
my sleeve all the time. So being an analyst and obviously speaking to the point about
Yeah.
representation, I'm the only Black man on my team, even to
Mm-hmm.
this day. It's
Mm-hmm.
unfortunate, but
Mm-hmm.
and I do think you and I both share the same sentiment when it comes to representation. We want to be in a place where we can, you know, obviously have that position of power to get more of us who look like us in this particular profession, because not only is it paying well, but think about how advanced technology is constantly growing and what it's growing into. So
Mm-hmm.
to your point about, you know, just how you had the courage and you already had the background, so to speak, for wanting to become a teacher and be able to walk this path, like you said, with these kids in robotics. So and I commend you for that. And so the fact that we were able to, like, from then to now, again, the
Mm-hmm.
10-year span, it's like so much has drastically changed for the better, of course, in that 10-year span. And a lot of that is due to the credit of Cook Systems, who provided us that avenue to, you know, be in this profession as long as we've been in it so far. Um,
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
yeah. And just as far as the robotics itself go, what is this position for you? What does it encompass? Like, what does it consist of in terms of the different types of things that you're exposing children to today?
Okay, sure. Technically, I backtrack. So my position, I am with Code Crew, which is a local nonprofit here in Memphis, Tennessee. for those of you who are, everywhere, all over the place. But we do work here locally in Memphis, but we also do things, statewide, but also national. But we also consider ourselves international. We have actually done work as far as like across the different continents. We actually have worked with some kids from Israel, where during the pandemic, we actually had a whole entire, actually, I'm sorry, before the pandemic, we actually had a virtual competition. And this had nothing to do with the robotics, but it's just to show that we had a joint effort to even work with kids who are not literally even here in America. So it's like computer science has no boundaries. It's literally trying to expose everybody all over the world to understand like the advancement of what's happening around technology. But within the organization, I am the curriculum and instruction manager. But robotics is one of the areas that we focus on. And then for me, one of the things that we know about robotics is, first of all, what you can do with robotics is almost like limitless, right? Because you don't have robotics, robots, or in this case, things that are from a robotic standpoint, they don't go to sleep. You don't have to pay them certain things, although we don't want, we don't want to automate everything, but there's certain things us as humans that we know we're not capable of doing because it just requires so much work. So having people and new generation understand that their purpose is to learn how the intricate of the systems work, and then feel like they can contribute in that space is what we want our students to see themselves. So if it's around thinking about how to resolve certain problems or critical thinking, which is our big thing that we use here, problem solving, critical thinking, it's for them to just see, wow, this is actually something that's complex. Yeah, that's true, but I can do this, right? And in practice, as you said, practice makes perfect. But that's really, for us, robotics, for me, it is a very special place because we know there's a lot of corporations that starting to go in that area. We don't want our kids to be the operators. We want them to be the creators and the maintainers from a programmatically standpoint. So you can get those high paying jobs, as you just mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what was funny about that too is that, we oftentimes see our kids get so consumed with the idea of just being consumers of these devices and technologies and things of that nature. So it's best to early on expose them to the idea of them creating their own, right? And so with this particular avenue that you're providing to them, what would you say, what are some of the programming languages that you guys use when it comes to the control and just understanding what that creative thinking is and how to basically be critical thinkers and responding or making their robots potentially respond in that way?
Sure. To keep it simple, so some of the tools that we use are provided by some third-party organization that we also partner with. And some people out there who knows, you've heard coding is, and I use air quotes, coding, right? Coding is, you can do block coding, which is literally you drag and drop the codes. And that's literally the beginning, right? So for the kids that never done programming, coding, that's where you want to start. You don't want to get into the heavy duty, what language and all that, but the ones that excel and they become really good at it, there's always the JavaScript, which is one of the language, Python, that's another one. So those are just different, at least two languages I can name right there that you can start having kids. Not only if you learn Python and JavaScript, it's not just robotics. Then you really start to open the doors, just computer science and technology. So that way, if you do robotics, you can also do other places, but it could help you with robotics in terms of JavaScript and Python.
Okay, yeah. And, I'm always interested in knowing just how quickly do these kids on a daily basis like advance, right? Because you spoke about some of those kids who actually can go into actually coding instead of just a drag and drop thing, right? I mean, again, that's the beginning of it, but those kids who get so intrigued by it and so interested in it, they start to, play around with it more at home and obviously introduce it to their parents if their parents are not exposed to it themselves. But for those kids who actually have parents who are in IT, that's kind of an advantage for them, right? So they're able to really incorporate some of the things that they learn from their own parents and being able to, make that particular robot that they're creating to respond in a certain way. And just on average, though, how many kids really advance in those particular programming languages?
I would say probably most of the time, if we have, let's say, 20 students come in, our goal is always to at least get like 80%, right? 80% you want to finish. But one of the retention, right? Retention, just like any school educator, would tell you retention is always the hardest part, but you want to take that number. And if you can get at least half of those students
Yeah.
progress, that's always a great, always a great win. So for us, it's really get more than half or a minimum of half of the students, because we know, again, it's very difficult. But again, the more we can get, we do. But whoever we can get to advance is what we're trying to get to. But yeah, it's always great for us to see and they also have different levels, right? Even from an advancement standpoint, some kids will progress faster than the other.
Yeah.
Some of them, they may do another one, then advance. So it looks different for different students, but we still call it as an advancement the longer you're with us, because you're progressing through the tracks that we have.
Okay. Now, as far as age ranges go, what are the age range for these kids who are coming into this and learning, robotics for the first time? What is the age range for your class on average?
I mean, technically, you can start as young as kindergarten, but I
Wow.
always said that. So here's the truth. There's literally from kindergarten to 12th grade, right? There is
Okay.
room to do that, but as I previously stated, it looks different. Let's say from K through second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth. So it starts to look different. They even might use different robots because they might be a little bit more user friendly for the little ones versus the middle school and the high school. But I would say anywhere between 5th and 12th, we can literally take a mixed grades, 5th to 12th, and walk them through a process. But obviously the older kids, because they've had a chance to do, high level learning, especially the ones that do like the math, science, they're very performing high performance in those levels. We see that's the output in terms of those that advance. The ones that don't have high math, science, and math and science, then we try to help them to get to their level. But for me, I would say 5 to 12 is probably like the sweet spot for having the kids. And you can say, yes, if you put something in front of them, they can perform at a high level.
Okay. Now, as far as the age range is one thing, but like with Code Crew, the nonprofit organization that you're a part of, how do they even go about recruiting kids, to possibly, be enrolled or get involved in just overall exposure of technology in general? How do you guys go about that?
Right. There's different aspects that we do. We have what's called after school program for us, where we put the after school program. I may even share with you our sites. So anybody that want to go out there look at the work that we do we post those things out there just like you would sign up for anything after school program. And then that's one avenue we get students. Another avenue is we work with local schools by means we go in the in-school electives where you may take like music, art, or any of those special classes. They just take computer science. By teaching those students, we also mention to them, hey, as you do Code Crew here during the school year or during the school day, we also have like robotics or video game development, whatever we may have. You can continue doing Code Crew outside of school. And another way we get students is we might have weekend exposure events, such as like what we call Hour Code. It could be, or family code nights, which is like we literally take the entire family. They show up, and then for mom, dad, kids, grandma, as a group, you're gonna learn something for the hour. You code something, so that's another way we can recruit students to come into our programs. But yeah, we're 365, as I say. Our doors are never closed unless it's the holidays. But if you asked us around here, we work pretty much all day, every day. It's nonstop.
Yeah, that's pretty fascinating to know that you guys are, you have those events where you're, basically taking the whole family and teaching them how to code if they're not exposed to it, right? So, and typically enough, if you expose something new to a parent, their parent's going to be psyched about it and more psyched for their kid to be exposed to it and understanding that, okay, this is a profession that you can actually go in because you're good at it, you're having fun with it, you love it, and it pays well. Because more and more, I'm starting to see now, especially on YouTube, you're seeing kids who are getting early on exposed to this particular aspect of technology, and they're taking off with this thing. Like they're competing in robotic competitions, they're competing in online gaming, and some of these kids are making thousands and millions of dollars as kids. And so, like, what are those conversations with those kids? Like when you first introduce these type of things, or even just show them that this is where they can take this. What typically are their responses to you when it comes to those kids? Say, oh wow, I didn't know we can do this. Like how are they responding to that kind of information?
So I always say we have we have a few students, right? So you have the ones that probably did their research.
Yeah,
They already know, hey, there's in terms of computer science technology, just being a creator, I already have an idea. I want to be a software engineer. Those kids, you got them sold. There's not a whole lot of selling you have to do. But
yeah,
it's the I would say the middle ground where you have the kids that like, as I said, the shiny object because they like to play the video game. They
yeah,
like to. They might think they want to be a content creator, YouTuber and all these things. And I say, take the same energy that you have, but here's something that you can learn, and this is going to impact you. And I always ask the question: how many of you all, since the day you were born, all you have known is like some kind of device in your hand, right? Everybody raised their hand.
yeah,
So we see in a new generation that all they've known is technology, and we don't, we talk about illiterate from a reading standpoint, like people that can't read and write. This is like their version of, if you cannot read, program, computational thinking,
yeah,
you're literally falling behind, because these are the tools that you're going to have to learn. Again, not just using it, but how am I going to use these tools to create something, right? The skills that
absolutely.
you're going to acquire are going to be beyond and just using it. So I think the kids that finally understand, like, okay, cool. So I don't just have to play a video game, or I don't have to just play with the robot. Now I get to learn how the robot is working, right?
Yeah,
And then, I can potentially maybe make some money if I do it right. Yeah, there's potential way to make money. So it's really also forming relationships, and it goes back to mentoring. We always talk about a lot of times, and within our young people, I'm careful when I try to push too much them, because again, you don't want to become like the person that just come in and just say a bunch of stuff, but you really want to form relationships, because once they find out the authenticity and where you're
absolutely.
coming from, they're willing to at least sit down. They may not understand everything, but they're willing to say, okay, it takes time. Okay, I'm going to sit here and learn as much as I can. And eventually they start to see themselves as like, oh, okay, I can do it. I just didn't know how to do it, or nobody ever showed me how to do it. So there you go. So it's like, it's building of relationships as well for me, when we talk about this whole conversation.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
definitely essential to their overall excitement about it too, because they should be assured that the teachers and people and the adults around them who are exposing them to this technology actually genuinely cares about not only them advancing in it, but just how they advance, right? Because
Mhm.
there's going to be some kids who are going to be discouraged a bit about, okay, I'm not as far ahead as other kids are, and even speaking from experience, I know what that feels like. So being able to relate to them in such a way and say, okay, well, they may be experienced or they may be more advanced in this area than you are, but that doesn't mean that you stop the advancement from here. Like,
Mhm.
okay, you may
Mhm.
be having some issues and difficulties in this area, but let's work on that. And let's also pay attention to what you are really good at. And so
Mhm.
being able to help bridge that gap between those two things is definitely
Right.
important to them, especially the younger they are, because
Mhm.
obviously we know the older ones typically enough, like, okay, now they had so many years of being exposed to this, now they are already become pros at this, right? So,
Mhm.
and one thing I've learned too, I want to give a quick shout out to Black Boys Code here. I was actually a volunteer. I've been a volunteer a couple of times, exposing kids to this very thing, right? So kids is from ages, I believe, 6 to like maybe 15 or something like that, and we actually were given opportunities to basically expose them to different aspects of programming languages. For me,
Mhm.
exposing them to SQL and just overall aspect of being able to talk to the database, which is what I specialize in. So
Mhm.
given the opportunity to utilize my skills and my work experience in that way was all the more just reassuring to me that I'm actually doing something that's impacting some lives. And so um and then I mean you can just see just how exciting these kids are, especially when it comes to gaming with playing Fortnite. I mean, these
Mhm.
kids will play Fortnite. I mean, 14 to 16 hours straight. Won't take a break. I mean, it was funny because I wasn't that familiar with Fortnite, so I started to be actually schooled by these kids who actually was like been in it since the beginning. I was just like, oh, I didn't even realize this was a real thing like that to them. So, what has been your experience with Fortnite when it comes to your kids like being super excited about
I mean, you want the truth? I mean, I tell them all the time, look, I only know just about, what I read about Fortnite. I don't play Fortnite. As you know,
Yeah,
we're working all day, all night, but I am no expert. But I do know for the kids that do really enjoy that, it's a thing, for me. I've only dabbled in it just a little bit, but I honestly couldn't. It's not like how we played Mario, played all these old school games. We really invested time in that. That's their way of investing time in it right now. So for me, it's great to see them watching it. I mean, well, playing it and having fun. But for me, I just, I don't have any skin in the game.
no,
As they and
I
it's
don't either.
as they try to, they just say school me and they try to tell me, hey, hop in this game. I'm like, look, I'm gonna watch
You know
you.
more about it than I do,
I
so
I
I
rather I
can't help
rather
you
watch you,
there.
and just be mesmerized by your ability to be able to execute flawlessly, as I say, as you as
Yeah,
you go through everything. So yeah.
exactly. And
Uh-huh.
what's even better about your nonprofit organization too, that you spoke about earlier, is that you guys provided an online, competition, if you will. So you guys actually do branch off, not just with the physical, training and teaching, but you actually do provide some ways of kids to being exposed who are not in this country or not even currently residing in Memphis, though, right? So how does that work?
Yeah, so well, everybody were the same place, but what, is it 2 years ago? I lose math sometimes. Whenever the
Yeah,
pandemic happened, right?
yeah,
People say 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I'm just gonna say time stood still. Um,
yeah,
but it was one of those where everything was virtual, but we have always done, from a technology standpoint, we've always had different offerings. But even for us, we had to figure out like how do we continue to engage our students, but make sure it was like something that was robust, right? Not just having it just to be having it. And then those after schools I mentioned earlier, like the 2 years that we were virtual, we did have the same after school programs or hour codes where we had parents that were registered, right? We would just advertise all over the place. People would share with their families in California, Houston, Chicago, like all these different places. We
yeah,
had kids that were logging on to do our programs virtually. So we're trying to work to keep that because again, we're back in person. Everybody's trying to figure out what the in person is and
yeah,
make sure that we're dedicating our resources to the in person, but we want to make sure we don't forget the virtual presence because some of those places don't have a co-crew in their city. So they're trying to figure out what can do with their kids, especially the ones that have already articulated that, hey, I like computer science. They might not know what computer science is, or I like making games. What does that mean, right? But here's an organization possibly that you can take these classes or work alongside that can mentor you and help you, channel that energy in the right path. So that's really what we're trying to do is continue that online, or as we call it, virtual presence. But we're trying to revamp that and really support that with enough resources so um, we don't misprint or misstep, and then we have something out there that's not really all the way polished. So we're going to like
yeah.
a restructure to make it look like it's supposed to. Hmm.
Okay. Now, in
Yep.
doing that, I'm always intrigued to know when organizations, preferably nonprofit ones, especially the organization that you guys are a part of out there in Memphis, what has been with the level of success that you guys have been able to obtain in this short span of time? What has been the overall outpour of support? Where has that support come from the city of Memphis? Has it been like just a flood of people coming in to support what you guys are doing, sponsorship wise, and just overall just supporting monetarily? What has it been like in the city of Memphis when it comes to just the community's support of this nonprofit organization?
I mean, I would say, to be honest, where I walk around, I see billboards or things like that. We even have like, we have a few of those around the city.
Yeah,
But even people would stop me if I had my co-crew T-shirt and say, "Oh, I saw your deputy executive director on TV talking about some programs I have," or your executive director was one of our events and he was talking about co-crew. So the names is starting to get out there. People are starting to realize, what co-crew does. From a support, I mean, the community is always in support because again, we get the students. family tells family, whether they have kids or not, they say, hey, you need to sign up my nephew in this program, or you need to sign
Yeah.
up. I mean, we have grandmas and grandpas that would, like this last summer, we had our first in-person summer camp for the first time after the
Yeah.
pandemic. We had grandmas and grandpa like excited to drop off their grandkids at our camp because they knew they were going to be doing some very exciting things. So we getting the support from the community. But in terms of like the organizations, you know, all the major, you know, organization here, or I should say corporation, you know, we have some affiliation with them as well. So they do, you know, support us monetary, but also from a volunteer standpoint. Some of these places,
Yeah.
they want their staff to really give back to the community, especially those corporations that do have a IT or slash developer, you know, department, because they want them to give back in the area where they're good, which is around computer science, technology. So here's a nonprofit that we can plug you in, so you can be also, you know, a giver back to the community if you are one of our employees. That's how some corporations do it. So Memphis has been, I mean, have been gracious, supportive, and we just keep saying, hey, just keep sending the kids. That's really, for the end of the day, that's what
Yeah.
matters. We never let a kid, you know, or a student feel like they can't be part of our program. That's why the more donation we get, a lot of our programs are funded, and kids don't have to pay anything to participate in our program. So that's the thing about Co-Crew that I love, is like there's no financial barrier to say, well, I have
Yeah.
to have a certain amount of money to be able to do this. So we always figure out how to make it work, especially for those kids that, you know, again, that come from, as we said, situations where they didn't ask for it, but they want to be able to do this. But unfortunately, everything that we do takes money. So we try to remove that by
Yeah.
getting a lot of those donations. And again, people have been gracious around the area as well.
Yeah. Now,
Mm-hmm.
another question too, to that point, right? So, with the success that you guys have been able to obtain in Memphis, are there any chances or possibilities that Co-Crew can kind of take this thing, you know, state to state, or travel with this? Like, are there any plans of that?
It's there's plans. Just
Yeah.
to give a quick answer, that there are plans to do that, because again, we're realizing that other people have came to Memphis, learn about what we do, and they say, you know what, I would love to go home and take it back, you know, some type of Co-Crew related
Yeah.
organization. So what we could do is, as far as like, you know, we can help establish another version of Co-Crew, or have people on the ground that, you know, that are part of Co-Crew, but they're like our, as I say, remote staff, or the people on the ground that live in this city, and then they're the ones that do the work. So we're there, there's multiple ways we can make it happen, but that has already been the conversation, to not just keep it here in Memphis, is again, let's say, like literally start to work with other partners and other organizations to be able to do that. And actually, that you mentioned about Black Boys Code, I keep forgetting about that. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because next time I have, you know, come down there, hopefully it be times when they have something, because I'm always also curious and intrigued to be able to go somewhere else in another space that somebody's doing the same work, just to learn some
Yeah.
of the things that they're doing, because I'm always learning to bring different ideas that could also help us, again, get to the bridge off to a different area, because we can't always think like we got all the answers, right? So working with other people and knowing what's happening is always a great way to do it. So I would love to one day be able to see that in action, because I know you talked about that before.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I'll definitely connect you with the director. His name is Colin McMillan. Shout out to him, and shout out again to Black Boys Code. They actually have a Black Girls Code too. So
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
that's again, that exposure piece is huge, and it's a paramount of importance to know our kids can be exposed to this type of thing early on in life that could possibly spark their interest in going to any other particular aspect of technology. Technology is a wide, like, there's so many things that encompasses in technology. You can be a software engineer, you can be a network administrator, you can be an analyst, you can be a
mm-hmm,
developer. You can. It's so many layers to technology that you can go into, and they're all high demand, high paying
mm-hmm,
jobs, and opportunities for you to really grow and flourish in such a way that you become that representation that you haven't been seeing in this
mm-hmm.
particular work field. And so I'm always encouraging Black people, especially the youth, to get involved in this, not from a consumer standpoint, but
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
more of the creators, the developers, the initiators, and things of that nature. Because There's so much opportunity here
Hmm.
for us to expose our kids to. We just have to, as parents, be willing to put them out there to at least open their eyes to it, even
Yeah.
if they don't initially like it. But once they see their friends like it, kids are copycats. So they just see,
Hmm.
once they see a couple of friends that like doing this, it's gonna spark their interest in another way too. So again,
Right.
exposure to technology is so important, especially in a world where our kids, like you said, the first thing that they see when they come out the womb is a damn tablet. So it's like,
Hmm.
you know, we want to be able to give them the opportunity to say, okay, this might be a profession I want to go in. Because I know for me personally, I was in third grade when I wanted to be a scientist, and I remember
Hmm.
I really remember just writing down the different things I want to do and how I want to do it. I'm seeing scientists with glasses on and white
Hmm.
coats and pouring chemicals and then involved in technology some kind of way. And that was early
Hmm.
on when technology was nowhere near as advanced as
Right.
it is today. So big shout out to our millennial generation, which the generation that technology was first founded and started. So we
Yeah.
were the ones that started off early on, being exposed to the very basic elements of technology compared to what it
I
is.
call it the humble beginning.
Yeah, it definitely was a very humble beginning if you think
Uh,
about how advanced technology is today versus what it was 20, 30 years ago. I don't want to like list how many years
what
back it
that
is
and I
for us as far as us being millennials, but
yeah, and I always
it's a
say
great thing
and I always say I may or may not have programmed my TI-83 calculator. I joke all the time. Even though we're talking about the concept of programming, like that you were doing those things, and that's why as we have friends, we have people that we have had in our lives, and you realize that we were all doing some shape or form something like this. We just didn't have a
though. Yep,
name for it, right?
yep,
And another thing I was pointing out, look, again, you talking about dating yourself. You think about the days of MySpace, right? And it's like literally still around, not just robotics, but just think about just computer science technology, where
yep,
people were coding, as we say, building the way we call HTML, CSS, which was the back
yep.
end of what your page looks like. And guess what? You took time, you understood what was happening, you lay out your design the way you want it to be, whether it was your waterfalls, your snowflakes, like everything you were doing, you were
Videos,
actually,
everything.
yeah,
Yeah,
you were programming everything that you were doing, right? So we had a
yep,
different mindset because we wanted to put the best product out there because you wanted people to come to your page, right? So
yep.
it's literally people didn't realize that that's what's happening, but now they're like, I was coding, I was programming. I was like, yes, that's literally what you were doing. That was like level one, the beginning.
It sure was.
So
Yep,
it's so that's where we want to be right now with our kids and say, hey, just know that this is not going anywhere and it's going to be more important for you because when you get to be in the workforce, things are going to look different. So you just want to be
yeah,
conscious and be aware and not be uh, and again, just like almost like the whole ignorant of what's happening, and then it's too late. My thing is always you never want our students and our kids to get to the point where they age out of school and they get into the real world and they realize like, wow, like where I can go, the lane is so small because everything else I have to have these skills that I
yep.
didn't get a chance to be exposed to. So that's really why we want to get ahead of it in middle school and high school to start forming that idea that like you look when you get out of here, it's gonna look different for you, you know.
It is.
So that's always the message.
Yeah, and you know what? It's funny you say that too because everything you do now involves technology. If you don't have not even now you have to have a little bit more than just the basic fundamental concepts of what technology does because every every profession, every industry, every company now it consists of you learning some type of technology. Some technological aspect of your job is going to require you to have technology education, in some degree. So it's best to be exposed to it early on, so that way you're fully equipped later in life to go
Mm-hmm.
out there into the real world, into the workforce, and be able to say, okay, I can do these things. And if it's not something that you're even familiar with doing, at least you've been exposed to technology to understand the fundamental concept of how to adapt to doing that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
obviously, it's so many platforms and so many different programs and software applications that get created and developed all the time. But
Yeah.
once you understand the fundamental concepts and the purposes of those applications and software and platforms, then you're able to understand it once you're on the job, right? So it may be some new technology that you're not exposed to, but you understand how it works compared to its opposition. And so with that level of understanding, you'll be able to, be trained enough, internally through your company and things of that nature, where they can fully equip you on how to utilize this now, because now you've been exposed to it, but the things you've been exposed to early on helped you get to this point where you're gaining that knowledge and experience in that particular aspect. So that's very important. So my last question, before I ask this question, I want to ask this last one. So as far as involvement in terms of like community service or just volunteering, how can people sign up to volunteer to just really get involved with what Code Crew is doing?
Right. So obviously, we're in Memphis, Tennessee. So if you have to be in Memphis, again, I shared the links with you, so you can probably attach to this once you post it. But yeah, there's always opportunity for volunteers for us to volunteer, to help out. We actually just had our July 31st, which I'm going to share a lot of links and things that you can share with your audience. But we just had our annual hackathon, which is like the culmination of what we call our calendar year, which is 2-day event. We give kids a theme. This year was around beauty, barbering, cosmetology. So their idea was there to build an app that would help around the industry. So we could use volunteers in a setting like that, where you come in and from, like I said, if your background is technology, you can maybe coach a team to be able to do that. If you're a non-tech volunteer, we always need non-tech volunteers to be with our students, right? Just to do other things around during those 2 days. So I think people always ask, well, I don't have any technology. No, just sign up. We're always gonna have needs for, all the things that we do. Other things that we do. So we always take volunteers from, we have had parents, we've had, other people in the community just want to come and help, but just as long as you want to help kids, you want to be within the community, we always say, sign up, and then we'll see you, at our next event.
Okay. I definitely will make sure I include all this information in the description of the show. So everyone who is out there in Memphis would like to get involved, would like to volunteer, even contribute some form of way, you'll be able to do that with the information and link that I'll be able to provide to you. Lastly, so in November, I want to give this acknowledgement and give you your flowers in this particular regard. So John has been nominated and has accepted this nomination for being one of the 40 under 40 in the city of Memphis, with the outstanding work he's been doing in this particular area as a software engineer, as a person who is teaching kids how to code in the field of robotics. You've been doing a tremendous job in the city of Memphis, man, and I am like a million times proud of you and proud for you for everything that you've been doing. Just talk to me a little bit about what this 40 under 40 actually means for those who don't know.
Okay, well, I was gonna say, I'm not sure when you're gonna post this, but because they haven't made any announcement on this. So hopefully, I guess when is this gonna go out?
This will go out next week, so I'll hold off.
So I'll say, we're gonna have to leave this part out.
Will y'all make sure y'all know that he's going to be acknowledged for a very tremendous accolade for what the very outstanding work he's been doing in the city of Memphis. I won't jump the gun because they haven't announced it yet, but since I did say it on the show, I mean, obviously speaking into existence, but also knowing that he has accepted his nomination for this particular accolade and achievement. But yeah, I definitely want to give you your flowers and acknowledgement in that particular manner, because this is a huge accomplishment for you and for anyone who's actually nominated and being on that list for the very hard work that you've been putting in to help make a difference in the city of Memphis. That's a tremendous accolade to have a tremendous accomplishment to have obtained, man. And so I'm definitely proud for you, and I look forward to celebrating with you in this particular regard. So I won't say nothing else about it, because obviously, like I said, I'm getting ahead of myself, actually jumping the gun. I just wanted to make sure I put it out there, because I'm proud of my brother-in-law for what he's been doing in the city of Memphis. So Um, hopefully, if they see if the committee sees the show, then they can just charge it to me and not to you in regards to over advertising this too early. So, but again, man, yeah, definitely send me that information that I can provide to everyone on how to get involved in Code Crew, how to be a contributor of some sort, or even a volunteer. And I'll make sure to include that in the description of the show. Thank you again, a million times over, man, for your time and being able to explain to us exactly what the work that you're doing and how exposure to technology is such an important aspect to our children's lives when it comes to their growth and development as they become older, because they're not going to be kids forever, right? So the earlier on they expose to something, the more intrigued that they would that interest will grow eventually to where they can already early on before they even reach high school or even right after high school know what profession they're going in and just what direction they need to go towards and making that happen for themselves. So again, that exposure is very important, and I'm glad that you are contributing to that exposure for them.
Not a problem. It was a pleasure. And like I said, this is, it's always a conversation. But for me, I tell people all the time, get involved.
Yeah,
Find your place wherever you are. Never get caught into the idea of, you have solutions. You hear people that have solutions, but take that one solution, actually apply it, and you do it, right, rather than waiting for somebody to make that a reality. So I think there is room for everybody to be involved. Yeah, we know there's disparity in this, whatever city you are, but just here in the United States in general, there's a lot happening. But I think we can all, as an individual, as I always say, contribute to the moving forward, so we can see this type of land that we want to see in terms of diversity and
yeah,
inclusion. It just won't take from a policy standpoint, we need those things to kind of stamp it, but policy alone doesn't do anything unless the people actually put the work in, right? So we are the
absolutely.
people, and it's our job to put in their work and actually make those things that are put in place, happen. So if kids are not getting to this space, as somebody said, the wise people always say, if I didn't train up the next generation, then I didn't do my part. So that is
Absolutely.
our responsibility, no matter how we look at it. People that may not think there are, mentors or they are, heroes, or they just people that other kids, young people look up to you. So whether you accept it or not. So it is our responsibility to make sure that we're conscious about what type of things that we decide to, embark on in this world. And it should be to bring up the next generation. So that's my charge to anybody that always ask me, around this area. For me, it's a personal thing. And we all have
Yeah,
kids, it's the same idea. You want to make sure that you leave them in a better place, hopefully, as we said, than you were at the stage that they're going to be in different parts of their lives.
yeah, absolutely. And the level of impact that you're embarking, and you're basically um, the exposure that you're introducing to these kids, man, reminds me a lot of my own mentor. My mentor, Mr. Haynes, who recently passed away a few months back. I owe him a great deal of credit too for being such a mentor to me in high school and just really filling my mind up with so much excitement for technology in such an advanced way that I remember, using different machinery to, do engraving and basically, creating dog tags, plaques, trophies, picture frames, things of that nature. Just overall exposure to that technology. He and I talked about that all the time, and um, I remember going to Mississippi State's graduate school program when I was an undergrad and saw the very machinery that they were using in the on the graduate level that I was using in high school. And I was like, man, this is fascinating. This is exactly what I want to go into. And obviously, and he and I talked about, wanting to potentially start a business up where we're, you know, um, associating ourselves with different companies to actually create these different plaques and trophies for those companies. We never get a chance to, but again, I owe a great deal to him for everything that he taught me. And again, I never take full credit for where I am today, career wise, especially when it comes to those people who were very intricate parts of my life exposing me to technology the way you're exposing these kids to technology today. So that should never be taken for granted, and that should always be acknowledged. The great work that you're doing, man. Keep up the great work, and definitely we're gonna talk again about this subject. And I'll definitely be reaching out. Hopefully, we'll be having Black Voice Code director on the show to talk about what they're doing because they actually do some traveling in different cities and states as well. So, maybe I'll connect you guys, and you guys can kind of brainstorm, possibly team up. And I will hope that that's the end goal for every organization that's doing things locally, right? Is to make it a national thing where everyone starts to collaborate together to expose more of our kids here, man, because we want to see our kids being represented in this particular workspace. Because yeah, a lot of money, a lot of opportunity and growth in this area, and we want to be able to expose our kids so they can be a part of it.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. And great job on, like I said, likewise on everything that you're doing. Like you said, I think this is a great place. As the conversation before we had this, before this we had was, for me, I like to be part of this type of discussions because I feel like we waste a lot of time and energy on useless things. So this is a positive thing right here.
Absolutely.
Come on and share, really good thoughts that actually can move us again as a people, as a community, rather than the infighting. And like I said, we can do that all day, but I think sometimes it's good to have a wholesome discussion about good things that's happening. So this is, again, big ups to you, and I think you have had some great people come on here and share the same thoughts and from different areas. So yeah, definitely would love to come back and in whatever shape or form looks like. Yeah, just let me know. We'll make it happen.
All right, man. I greatly appreciate it, man. Tell my beautiful niece I said hi, and my wonderful sister-in-law, Portia. We said, hey, we'll be talking to y'all pretty soon anyway. So, yeah, man. Again, I'll let you know in advance. We'll have a discussion about this again, and we can, go into it in more full detail as well. Again, man, be safe and continue the hard and great work you're doing out there, Memphis, man. Very, very happy and proud of you.
Sounds good. Same to you, brother.
If you like what you've heard from this week's episode and would like to hear more from previous episodes, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel below. You can also find me on social media platforms at Speak to the Mic _podcast show on Instagram and Speak to the Mic podcast show on Facebook. Be sure to also like, share, and subscribe to my Spotify page at Speak to the Mic podcast show. As I put out more thought-provoking content, your opinion and thoughts are needed and appreciated. I thank you all in advance for your support and look forward to hearing from you soon.